G'day and welcome to David Joshua Ford Live. This is episode 112, and on today's show we're taking a look at how to set steps using expressions. And this is something that is coming in Companion 4.1, which is a beta, so don't use this in your primetime show just yet, but just to give you an idea of what's coming ahead. So we're going to take a look at setting steps with expressions and then how to conditionalize that feedback so we're not getting too much feedback coming through. And then also the action to set logic if, which will help us further sort of narrow down the actions that we're taking on our buttons. If you're new to the channel, we talk about live streaming, video, and photography here. So if you have any questions, drop in the chat. We'd love to hear from you as we go along, or if you're watching after the show, then drop them in the comments and I can answer questions that way. Just to recap of what we've been looking at in Companion, I jump over to here. So previously, in previous versions of Companion, when you created a button, there were different steps that you could take. Early on, it was just a toggle function of sort of like on or off, like a latch type state. And then in perhaps Companion 3, I can't quite remember exactly which version it was, but it was brought in multiple steps. And so here, this step 1, you could keep on adding in steps. So you could have multiple things happening within a button. And you can see here it's highlighted and I'm sort of, step 1 is selected here and step 4 is selected here. And then each time you press that, it would automatically advance to the next step, unless you set it to advance manually, in which case it would stay on that step and you would have to use actions elsewhere to direct where you wanted that step to be targeted. But now what we have is a expression mode here. And so what this is looking for in effect is a number. So for example, 4, and now it's targeting 4. But we obviously don't want to use a hard number there because there's no point having a step otherwise. So really what we're going to be putting in here are variables like, I've got one custom ATEM like this. And so I can, on my ATEM page, choose which ATEM I'm selecting here. And so as you selecting ATEM 3, we've got a step 3 selected, or ATEM 1, we've got ATEM 1 selected here. And if I put in the variable up here, you'll see the number here as I change along like that. All right, so let's take a look at part 1, when it's going to be how to set up this expression. Remember, this is coming in version 4.1, so just start sort of working on this and understanding it and building it, but I wouldn't put it into your shows right away if it is mission critical. So to start with, I want to give you an example of a toggling an armed mode. So this could be, maybe you've got a button that you want someone in your team to be able to go live or something like that, but you don't want that button on all the time because it could be dangerous. You could, suddenly go live without warning. And so you want a secondary button to arm that first button and have that on a different page so you can kind of control who gets access to turning things on or off. Or maybe you just have it for yourself as a safety switch so that you can sort of disarm a show and then you're not going to accidentally press any buttons. So we're going to take a look at how to do that. All right, so let's jump back over to here. And the example that I'll give you is I've got 2 buttons here. I've got an off and armed button. So I just turn this on or off. So this is my arming button. And then on the other button that I have is, for example, a live button. Like this could be going live or recording or making some sort of change. And you can see that the feedback on that is changing. So if I've turned it off, then it shows that it is a live button, but it is not, it's sort of grayed out to show it's inactive. So if I press this, nothing happens. Whereas if I arm it and live shows that it's active and I hit that button now, then it will start the show or whatever it is. So let's look at how to go about setting that up. I might just cut these buttons down here so I can build them again. All right, so we're going to start by building, creating a button, and we need to create a variable, custom variable. If you come over to custom variables, and it can be whatever you want to call it. I'm just calling this one test. And you can see I've already got a variable here called test current value 2. And if you wanted to add this into your system for the first time, you would just come in here and hit test and then go add, and then you would have this variable that you can play with. So now under buttons, we can do, what did I have here for, where was I going here with custom variables? Okay, so if we put this test variable in here, so we go dollars parentheses, and I'm just going to go semicolon test, you can see that'll pop up. So custom semicolon test, close parentheses, is going to show me that variable. So if I click 1 or 2 is basically what these will be, which is going to relate to tabs 1 or 2. So under the first one, let's say the first tab is on, and I basically want to create a toggle here to change it between 1 or 2. So I'm going to set it to the expression mode, and I'm going to use the custom test, dollars custom test, and like that. And we're going to go raw value, set the raw value of test, custom test. Now, if it's 1, I want to make it 2, and then I can just duplicate this whole step. And now I have a step 2. And so if it's 2, I want to make it 1. And now I can see as I click this button here, I'm changing this custom variable between 1 and 2, which for us is going to relate to tabs, steps 1 and 2, depending on what we want to set. Now for a bit of feedback, you could come over to feedback and just go variable, check value, and I'm going to put in test, custom test equals 1. So if it equals 1, you can see the color changed there. I want to put in some text, and I'm just going to call this armed. And I'm going to set the font size to be readable. I think 18 will fit. Armed. Excellent. Okay, now I can again just duplicate this. And so now the other variable was 2, so which is our off state. So if it is 2, then we just want to call it off. And we're going to get rid of the background color. And let me just click this so it's off. And so that is we can just say that it's off. And you can adjust other variables, other properties here in terms of adding a PNG or the font size or the font and all that kind of stuff into here. But now we've essentially built a toggle button here, which is saying armed, on or off. So we can arm our show on or off. Now we want to create a button that is going to be our actual button to run a show. So again, we'll create a button, and we're going to set it to expression mode, and we want to use the test. Come back, custom test. That's good. All right, and we're going to create another step. And in this instance, if it's off, I don't want it to do anything. And if it's on, I want it to do something. So that's where step 2 is just going to be blank with nothing in there. You do need a step 2, otherwise if you only got one step, it will run step 1. So we've got a blank step 2, and in step 1, I'm going to add in an action. I was just using background color just so we could see that something's been triggered here. So this button's background, we're going to go green, and I'm going to duplicate that and then make it go back to black. And in here, I'm going to put a wait of a second in between there. So if I have armed the show, then if I click it, it's going to run whatever action it is. So you could, instead of putting in these colors, you could get an ATEM recording start or stop like that. So ATEM 2, you could get it to toggle, or any other sort of action that you want to put in here. I'm going to delete that because I am recording right now and I don't want to not record. And then we're going to give this some text so we know what we're doing. In this instance, let's pretend it's like a live button. So I'm going to type in live, and in the feedbacks, I'm going to go, let me just double check what I did here because I think I just did one feedback. Yeah, just one's enough. So I could set the base layer of the text here to be the off version. So if I set to just sort of a gray, it's sort of grayed out here on this default base level feedback of the color of the text. And then under feedback, if I go variables, check value, and I get my tests, so semicolon test, put that one there. And if that equals 1, you can see it's gone red already. So if it is on, if it's enabled, then it's going to be red. But I just want to change this a bit. I want to get rid of this background and make the color red to just make it a bit more, less obvious. So it doesn't look like the other button there. So now if I hit live, then that background color action runs. And if I disarm it, then nothing happens. So that's a way to make your buttons with a toggle button that you could use to arm a show or to put it in a sort of show ready state. So, you could have a number of things so that you could have that as a conditional text that if the arming is off, then you can sort of play around in a sandbox and you're not going to worry about going live or something like that. All right, let's take a look at part 2, and we're talking about using this alongside conditionalized feedback. So we were talking about getting a feedback to directly relate to one of these steps. Once we've targeted a step, we kind of want to make sure that the feedback that is coming onto that button is related to that variable and is not showing us all this feedback. Otherwise, the button kind of becomes useless if it's showing us multiple states of feedback. We just want it to show what we have selected. So the example that I have is using 3 different ATEMs controlled from a single button, which is something I'm starting to build into my new profiles, and there's a bit to put into it, but let's take a look at that on, jump over here, page 16. And okay, so the variable that I have is this ATEM variable. Just to show you what I've got in my connections tab, I've got ATEM 1, 2, and 3. So I've got 3 ATEM connections. I have a constellation, which is my main switching that is going on. And I've called that ATEM 1. Importantly, I've just called this ATEM 1. And so that these names are all the same except for that last digit, which will become the variable. ATEM 2 is my extreme, which is doing sort of the recording of this show. And then ATEM 3 is usually an ATEM Mini Pro that I have, which is actually not connected at the moment. So I've just also connected it to my constellation. So they're the different connections that I have. And I want to create something so that when I press a button down here, for example, cut, or like a program button, so switching between inputs 1 and 2 on the ATEM, I just want that same button to reference whatever ATEM I have selected, 1, 2, or 3. I don't want to have multiple pages and multiple buttons to have to manage. I want to put that all on one button. All right, let's go back over to here. And so we're going to rebuild out these buttons that I've created here, which I think I'm set up for. If I cut to camera 1, cut to camera 2. So these are the buttons that we're going to create, and I've selected ATEM 1 to show you how to do that. So let's jump back over here, and I'm gonna delete that, and I've got my reference button just in case. All right, so to start with, I've got these 3 ATEM buttons here, which are just selecting which ATEM to put in to be controlling the other buttons. So I've got ATEM. It's just a basic button I've got a short release here of set the raw value of the custom ATEM variable to 1 or 2 or 3, depending on which ATEM I'm targeting. And I've also, in this instance, just built in a long press, so if I hold the button down, it's going to turn that whole ATEM on or off. So if I hold down 3, I can just turn off that ATEM connection here. You'll see this one is now turned off because nothing's connected. But for demonstration, let's turn that back on. So these are all connected, showing that they are connected. And then I've just got a feedback state showing that this ATEM is the one that is selected. So now over here, I need to create a button, and I want my ATEM to be the program. Set the program input of program. I'm just going to keep it simple. So this would be the button that I could do here. So if I push this one, I've cut to ATEM 1, input 1, which is like a super simple way of doing a button. And then I could add a feedback, which is ATEM program, ATEM, let's just put in ATEM 1 program 1 source here. So now I've said if ATEM, and you can always invert these if you're building out a button. So I'm saying if this is the case, but inverting it will say if it's not the case. So now I can say, okay, if the background is selected, I want it to be this one, and I want the ATEM, let me go short, the ATEM 1 short name is Canon 1 is what we're seeing here. And I want my text to be white, and I'm just going to make it 24 so it's more legible. Okay, so that is showing an inverse here, so it's not actually correct, but ATEM 1, mix effect 1, Canon camera 1 is selected, and then that is on and ready to go. So I'm going to turn this one off so it's actually showing me the proper feedback. I'm going to make the background red just for knowing that it's a program button that I can cut to. And I can do the same thing for this one here. So if I go ATEM 1, short name 2 is Canon camera 2, and feedback would be 2, and feedback would be 2. Okay, so now I have buttons where I can cut to it, and it'll show you the feedback here, and then I can cut back to 1, cut back to 2, and you'll see effectively I've just created a very simple button in Companion, but now I want to have those two buttons control my other mix effect layers and my, well, let's start with ATEMs, just my other ATEMs that we want to have in there. So what I'm going to do is back over button 1, instead of using this short name variable ATEM 1, which if you're not familiar where they are, go to variables, look up your ATEM, I can never find it, alphabetical ATEM 1 here, and there are a lot of ones, but if you type in short name, you'll see that these are all of the variables that you can pull from. So for example, the short name of my ATEM 1 is Canon 1, C-A-N 1, and that's what I'm using over here. Okay, so instead of it referencing ATEM 1, I'm going to delete the 1, and I'm actually going to type in my variable. So custom ATEM, close the parentheses. And so now you can see this custom variable that we created before for the ATEM, which equals 1, 2, or 3, is going to be resolved into a 1, 2, or 3. And so it's going to target my label ATEM connection 1, 2, or 3. And so that's how we get this name change across different ATEMs that we've selected. So if I keep an eye on Canon 1, if I jump to number 2, you can see that this has changed to program, which is the name of my extremes. Input 1 is it's recording program into there. And if I jump back here, you can see Canon 1. So that's how we're going to update this across them. Also, if I hit number 3, it wouldn't change because remember I had routed number 3 into the same ATEM as number 1. Okay, so that's our name. And then we can choose which action to take by setting up these steps. So I've already got my set program input to this one. So I'm going to turn it onto an expression, and I'm going to use the ATEM, custom ATEM. And this is now going to resolve as tabs 1, 2, or 3. And under step 1, I'm going to duplicate it. Oops, wrong one. They're all so close together. Not that one. I want this one. So now I've duplicated step 1 and step 2, and the same thing. So I've selected step 2, and I've changed it to target ATEM 2. And then I can just duplicate it again, and now I've got ATEM 3. So now, and you can see here it's targeting step 1 is the blinking that's going on here, meaning it's going to action step 1, is this one. Whereas if I select ATEM 2, it's now selected the ATEM 2 tab, and if I select ATEM 3, then it has selected the ATEM 3 tab. Okay, so that is now we've got 3 ATEMs on the one button, and my input is showing the correct name, but there's one more step, which is the feedback on this, because I want to make sure that the feedback is correct. Remember, we had ATEM 1's feedback here, but because we've got 3 ATEMs connected, we need 3 sets of feedback, but I don't want it to show if the ATEM is not selected. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come to add a feedback and type in conditionalize existing feedbacks. And I'm just going to drag that one to the top so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to say check value, variable check value, and we're going to check the ATEM value. So my shortcut is semicolon ATEM. So if I'm saying if it's ATEM 1, then use this feedback here, which I can actually just drag my feedback up into it. Not particularly easily. Let's drag this back down. Oh man, it's bumping all around. I do not like this part of it. Okay, there we go. It'd be great if it just had checkboxes and you could bulk action some things. Okay, so now I've got under my feedback that ATEM 1 input number 1, which is canon 1, and I've selected what feedback I'm going to do. And once I've set this up, it's actually really easy just to come over to my, let's just minimize all of this because it gets a bit easy. I've actually only got one feedback here, one sort of feedback action, and then there's multiple things within it. So I can just hit the duplicate button twice. And so now I've got ATEM 1, but I can go here and change this to, if it is ATEM 2, then I want to target ATEM 2, and you see this change to input 1 being program. And I'm going to leave that, and I can minimize that again. And then my last one was ATEM 3 and ATEM 3. So the variable, if it is 3, then show me the feedback on ATEM 3 canon 1. So what that means is, oh, and then basically I would grab this button here and I would duplicate it. So I've copied and pasted it over the top. So now I've got 2 input 1 buttons, and I can just come through here and start updating them. So keeping the same name, but changing it to short name 2. And under here, this is all going to be the same, but I'm going to change input 2. Same for ATEM 2, I'm going to be input 2, and ATEM 3, I'm going to be input 2, and feedbacks is ATEM 1 input 2, and ATEM 2 input 2, and ATEM 3 input 2. So it gets a bit laborious, as you can see, and if you have like larger variables that I'm playing with in my profiles, it's quite a lot of things to build out. But once you've got that, you've got a button that you can kind of cut and paste around, and it's always going to reference whatever ATEM you have selected. So if we test this out, I am on ATEM 1, and if I cut to camera 2 is my overhead camera that we're looking at here, and you can see that my camera 2 is highlighted, but if I was to change my ATEM to ATEM 2, then you can see that what's going to program on my ATEM Extreme is the input 1, which I've called program because I'm recording a program feed into input 1. And so that's why those numbers shifted, and 3 is obviously going to be the same as 1. And so that just is a way of, quickly jumping between ATEMs and having the same button layout there. So hopefully that helped. All right, last one is, let's take a look at the action logic if statement, and this is sort of building into the action side of this. So we looked at how to select specific steps and then also conditionalize the feedback that is shown on that button. But within the steps, you can now also conditionalize the actions that are taken with an action that has sort of sub-actions within it. So the example that I'm going to show to you is something I'm building out, which is basically a cut auto button for the ATEM, which has 12 different states that it could take, and but all on the one button. So over here is this new cut button that I'm building. If you remember on the ATEM software, where are we? Over here. So I've got a constellation connected, which has 2 mix effect layers, ME1 and 2. If I had a larger ATEM, it would show ME3 and 4 as well. So I've built out for ATEMs that can have MEs up to 4. But on the page, there's only a single cut button. So you're not having, 16 different buttons for cut and auto. You just have a cut button, and then that cut relates to whatever mix effect layer you're on. So you can see as I jump between ME1 and ME2, the inputs will change, and we're basically sort of building this out on Companion like we were doing with the program highlighted buttons changing there. So I want to have a one cut button so I don't have a full page, and part of the reason is you've only got so much real estate on a Stream Deck. So 32 buttons. If I had 16 buttons for cutting, then there wouldn't actually be any buttons left for cutting a program, that kind of stuff, and they'd get very big and complicated in the real estate. So rather than going broad real estate, we're sort of creating depth and logic into these buttons. So back to my ATEM. I used to have these buttons cut and auto, and now I'm building a new cut button that can reference ATEMs 1, 2, or 3 being selected, and also whether it's on ME 1, 2, 3, or 4, which I haven't sort of gone into here, but it's something you can do in terms of using variables for different MEs. So let's take a look at the button, and I'll just sort of simplify this and sort of talk through this button that we have here. So the text that I have is using the variables ATEM and ME for mix effect layer. And this cut is actually a PNG button. And then the variable text down here is just, I didn't want it to be distracting, but I just want it there in case you're wondering, if I hit cut, what actual ATEM and mix effect layer am I cutting on? So we've turned on our expression, and we're using the ATEM variable here so that we're going to target 1, 2, or 3. And these are all the same actions across 2 and 3, just targeting the different ATEM. So let's go back to 1 and just work through that. I'm going to minimize this one, and I'm going to minimize this one so you can see. I've also got a button here where I've added a duration group down here, and then if you edit it, I've set the duration to be 300 milliseconds, execute while held. And so what that means is if I do a short press, which is these buttons. These are going to do cut actions. And if I hold it down, then after 300 milliseconds, it's going to trigger an auto fade. So if I hold that button down, it cuts to whatever's in preview, or I could cut straight across with a short press, or I can fade across by holding it down. So I really like that. It's the way I've always sort of built out this button. There's also an auto button available, just, you know, if you're more likely to use that with a single press. But I just like having that all within one button, mostly because I also just use cuts rather than cuts and autos. Excuse me. All right, so I've selected my button, and then let's take a look at the logic statement. Remember, depending on, so I've got ATEM 1 selected, so this is selecting ATEM 1's tab here. So I've already ruled out ATEMs 2 and 3. But within this, I've got four mix effect layers that I could be targeting. And so up here is where I can select ME 1, 2, 3, or 4. And at the moment I'm on ME 1. And so my logic statement here, so you can add action logic if statement, which looks a bit like this, logic if statement. It'll look like when whatever is true, then do this, or else do something. And usually I have nothing in the else. So I'm just saying when this ATEM variable is 1 for ATEM 1, then do a cut or an auto transition. I'm just gonna delete this one for now. All right, so I'm saying when the custom variable ME, which is mix effect layer value 1, when the ME is 1, then do an ATEM 1, perform a cut transition on ATEM 1 mix effect layer 1. And then I've got another logic if statement, which is the same again, ME equals 2 and ATEM 1 on the ME2 layer. So that's how we're checking to see, is this variable 1, 2, 3, or 4? So first we've got our ATEM layer, I guess. Is it ATEM 1, 2, or 3? Yes, it's ATEM 1. Within ATEM 1, is it mix effect layer 1, 2, 3, or 4? And then take the action. So that is the way you can sort of stack more conditional actions within a step. And then that brings us to feedback, which is, if I minimize all this, there's 12 different states that could be on this button, 3 ATEMs with 4 mix effect layers, so 12 potential states. And I've got what we were looking at before in terms of conditionalizing existing feedbacks, and open this one up, which is if it is custom ATEM 1 and custom value ME1, then we want to do ATEM, do a ATEM transition, which is like an auto transition for ATEM 1, ME1. And I've just adjusted this text. If I invert this, you'll see that the button will go change the PNG to auto to show me that it's running. And it will also put running at the bottom. So I've just created some text there to sort of show that this is in an auto state rather than a cut state. So I've done that for each of the 12 states, and now have a button that is a simple single cut button, which also has a long press for the auto buttons. And it just makes the designing the cutting page of this ATEM much more simple and saves a lot of real estate for other functions. All right, let's take, I'll take a few questions. Jump back to here. Where are we? Over here. I'll do a couple I'll just look through the chat, and then I've got 2 more bonus examples that we can take a look at. So what do we got here? G'day Nico, great to have you here as always. Has not installed 4.1 yet, so I'm curious. I'm running 4.1 today, so I mean obviously like this live stream that I do here is my own show and work, and I'm testing out things, so I'm more happy to break something, I would use an earlier version if I'm running a client show. And I did have some troubles with an earlier beta of version 4.1, but the current betas have been reliable. Nils, great to have you here. New background in the studio. Yeah, well, it's actually the same background. I've just got the background down. So I was shooting some sort of lifestyle product type shots against a background yesterday. So I've got this backdrop that can just drop down. I've also got a green, and I haven't put it back up yet. But this is same lighting, same setup, just with the white backdrop. But it does kind of change it. It sort of like cleans up a shot once you pull into a close-up. So that's what I've been doing with that. Donny's from St. Vincent in the Caribbean. That sounds very nice. Would love to be at the beach right now. Enjoy. And Ronnie has a question. How do I get a macro to send MIDI to companion from ProPresenter that would automatically trigger and execute an action on OBS? ProPresenter is on the Mac and the rest is on Windows. That's quite an involved question there, and I probably don't think I can answer that off the bat here. I'll have a think about it and maybe respond in the comments. But I've actually never installed ProPresenter, so I'm not totally up to speed with that module. Trigger and execute an action on OBS. It sounds like you probably have some familiarity with Companion, so what you are probably looking for is, coming to connections, adding in ProPresenter, and then send a MIDI to Companion from, I don't know exactly which MIDI command you're wanting to send, but if you add in ProPresenter, then you could go to triggers, add a new trigger, and basically look for an event of like a variable change, and then add a condition for like ProPresenter. I think I added that in there. Look for ProPresenter, and then if one of those variables in ProPresenter changes, take an action within OBS to toggle whatever you want to do. So there's maybe something to consider. Maybe that gives you a bit of structure you could follow there. All right, let's take a look at the bonus example 4, which is alternative page jumps for multiple PTZ cameras. So this is something that I use in my profiles. I've got a profile that can control 6 Canon PTZ cameras, and rather than having like a menu page where you've got 6 buttons to jump to each page, I just wanted a single button that is going to go to the last used camera. Maybe because you're using one camera frequently, but also in your head, you're gonna go, okay, I know I was working on camera 4, and I'm gonna land back on camera 4 when I go back to the PTZ pages. So, apologies for I guess I could do a bit wider here. So this is sort of the 4-deck array of what I've got for PTZs. So from my homepage here, I've got a button which at the moment says PTZ2. So I know that if I press this, I'm going to be operating PTZ2 camera. And that automatically there's 3 pages per camera. One is the sort of homepage, which is, framing up and all that kind of stuff and selecting cameras. Then there's a recall page of up to 36 recalls, and then an adjustments page for exposure, all that kind of stuff. And then there's like a menu page down at the bottom, like a global menu. So as I select each camera, each of these pages are updating. But if I was to be on camera 3 and then exit out of here and I go off and I'm doing some ATEM switching, when I come back into here, this says PTZ3. And so when I jump into here, it's now showing me PTZ3 camera, and I can select any other camera I want. So previously, let's take a look at this button here, which is the page jump, like a smart page jump button. Previously, what we had under page 1, here we go, was a bit more involved. So this was using steps which had a manual progression. So we turned off auto. So when you press it, wouldn't actually make any step advances. You'd have to manually advance it. But it was step one, and it was always step one was kind of checking the variables, because when you boot up Companion, it's going to go back to the first step. So you don't want to have your default testing page on step 4, for example, because once you quit Companion and reboot it, it's going to be on 1. So 1 was where we checked things, which was basically using this internal logic if statement, and I had a custom variable, which was that custom PTZ page. So under variables, custom, I'm going to filter down to custom PTZ, maybe it was not, that's an older one, PTZ page. Okay, so I have a variable that I've created here called PTZ underscore page, and that's just remembering the last camera that I was on. So that's why it says 2 here. So 1 to 6 is what is going to be in here. Go back to buttons, select the button. And so here I've got the text is PTZ, and then this internal variable, which is getting a bit old because it now no longer needs this internal. I can actually just delete the internal, and it'll be custom semicolon is the new, there. Where is it? PTZ page, I think that's right. There we go. It's not working. Okay, let's just get rid of that. PTZ page. There we go. I feel like there's a bit of, man, there's some really bad stickiness in here. Or if it's just going slow, maybe. Custom PTZ page, here we go. Maybe it's slowing down a bit. Okay, so this is the button here, and it is using this first step to check this logic statement. So if I shrink it here, you'll see I've got 6 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for each of the cameras. And it's checking to see if that variable is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. I'll just open up this one here. So you can see logic if statement when true is this check the value of PTZ page. If that equals 1, then set current step to 2. So if it's 1, set it to 2. If it's 2, set it to 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6, and so on. And I'm just going to close this one up again, because remember, we've got to go to step 2, becomes like camera 1 is on step 2, which always gets a little confusing. And then this last action here is press and release this button. So it's running through this logic, finding that it is step 2, that the variable is set to 2, and so it's going to jump to tab 3, and then this last one here is going to press this button again. It's going to force press. So if I jump to 3, and it's going to run this action, which is surface set to page, and this is where I've got set my current surface to the PTZ to home page on page 80. I've also got, if you're using my profile in a block of 4 stream decks, that's where I've got these other things that also fire in terms of custom surfaces 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then the last one is set this current step to 1 to take it back home for ready for the next press. But we don't need that anymore. Oh, and then the feedback actually has nothing on it. We don't need this whole step now. So what I can do is I'm just going to copy this and paste this here. I will change the color a bit just so you can see that it's a different button that I'm working on. And step 1, I'm just going to trash that, and I'm going to remove. And so now this, and I'm going to put in turn it into an expression, and we're going to go custom PTZ page. Okay, And you see it's already jumped to select number 2 here because the variable is 2. And so now we can go through and everything's good here other than I just need to get rid of this set current step. I don't need that anymore. Delete 2 and delete. So all of these, it's going to be a simpler way to build buttons because we don't need these going to steps and then going back to the first step. And it's kind of cleaner to look at, and I think we'll have fewer mistakes. Delete. Okay, so now I've got this button which is on PTZ2, and I should be able to test this out. If I press the new button, you can see that I've jumped over to camera 2, and if I go to select camera 4, for example, when I go back home, this is showing 4, and if I select the PTZ button, it brings me back to 4. And so it's just a nice way of doing some page jumps. And yeah, hopefully that one makes sense. All right, I got one more bonus for you, and it's not related to the last stuff I was talking about, but we're looking at collections for actions and triggers and variables. So this is sort of a new way of organizing those assets within Companion, and also some new actions to be able to turn them on or off as groups. So let's jump back over to here. So under connections, you'll now see this create collection here, which if I go down here, it'll just pop it down here because I got some already. And I can go new collection and call it demo group, or whatever I want to call it. And then I can drag things into it, probably things that I don't need, into it like that. So I've got a listener, a bit-focused listener here for a computer that I'm not using. And so now these actions sit, I can always drag this one in too. These ones sit within a group. And I can turn the whole group on or off. And it maintains which ones within the group were turned on or off. It's a bit like Photoshop layers. You can put a whole bunch of layers into a folder, turn out which layers are enabled or disabled, and then that folder you can turn it entirely off globally or turn it back on. So that's going to be useful, for example, with my PTZ cameras. Also a good way of like just organizing things. So if I collapse these here, you know, I've got a whole lot of connections, but I can kind of hide them and just focus on working with my PTZ cameras. You can see I've got the group, the collection is turned on, and even though I've got 6 connections at the moment, I've only got 2 cameras connected, and so they're turned on and the other ones are turned off. And I can sort of turn everything off or on with this switch. And so what that gives us is in buttons, we can create a button and we can type in collection, and we can enable or disable a collection, becoming a mouthful. And what do we got? What did I have? I had my demo group. Here we go, demo group toggle, or I could just turn it on or off. And then I could also add in a feedback for collection when a collection is enabled or disabled. And if I want my demo group, if it is enabled, yes, and if it's not, then it's going to be black. So this button here, if I jump over to connections, we'll scroll down to this demo group. Remember this little toggle here, I can actually now turn that off or turn that back on with a button within Companion, which means you could also build that into triggers and other things. There's also collections for triggers. So if we go to triggers, this is a nice way of organizing things. So I can create a collection, new collection, edit, demo, delete. So remember to delete it. And then we can drag whatever we want in there. I could actually just, maybe I will use this one. So I've got some ones that I'll rename this NFC because I have these ones here. And I can turn these on and off. And again, under buttons, I could, instead of, I'll just get rid of this, put that down here, and I could create a button which has triggers. Type in collection, enable or disable trigger collection. So same thing as connections, but looking at triggers, and NFC, toggle, and I could go collection, so LEC collection, trigger when NFC is on, yes. And so now we go back to triggers, NFC, and I can press that off and on. So that's a useful way to turn off groups of triggers and also to remember their particular state. I use this a bit for tally. So within my profiles, I've got tally lights for the Canon PTZ cameras. So there's 12 different states here of turning it on or off. If I'm doing a client shoot and I want them to have tally feedback, then I turn that on. But for most of what I do here, I actually have the tallies off, partly because I'm looking at confidence monitors and I know if camera one's on or not. But mainly because when the tally light is on, this camera is within a PTZ teleprompter, which I think I have a shot of. Do I have a shot? Here we go. Teleprompter. And so what can happen is that tally light can sort of reflect back through the glass and you can end up with a little kind of reflection within there sometimes. So I usually just have that off. But that's the other one that you can have set up. And then under, what was it? Under variables, custom variables, you can also create a collection like this, new collection, and you can put variables within a collection. As far as I can see yet, I don't think you can do bulk actions to the variables within that collection, you know, like make all of this collection. Sorry, I wasn't showing you what I was doing there. Under, let me just delete this one. Proceed, delete. So I had under variables, custom variables. There we go, variables, custom variables. Instead of creating a variable down here, you could go create collection and you could edit that one and call it demo. And then you can drag variables into there. So I have a ATEM group here I was starting to build out, and I just put that test variable that we had before into there. And like I was saying, I think at the moment this seems more like organizational with variables, which is still handy because, you know, I've got like a lot of variables. And so being able to put them into a collection for PTZ cameras or for ATEM is a really nice way to just kind of collapse them and get them out of the way so you can focus on the variables that you want to work with. But I don't think there's yet any actions that I have seen in terms of manipulating those variables. For example, you know, within all the variables within demo group, make them one or whatever the case may be. So I think it seems more organizational at the moment. Alrighty, let's have a look. A few versions back, Companion began to support of the ATEM micro panel. Could any of these techniques you discussed today be used to switch multiple ATEMs using the micro panel? That's a great question. And yeah, I haven't got the ATEM micro panel, but if I go ATEM micro panel, just find an image. What I would expect is, let me go over here, is that these buttons would sort of fit the grid. So like this blank space in here would probably have, where are we? Buttons under, like, you know, this section would be empty, and then you'd have buttons down here that would relate to these 2 rows. So I imagine there'd be like 4 rows by however many, and it would map to it. There'd just be some blanks in there. So you just need to make sure, for example, the program row, that you're placing program buttons onto the appropriate slot, and also that within surfaces, it would pop up here. I'll just go to emulator. Also new in 4.1 is this, the settings don't pop up over the top. It's just a UI layout of on the side. And you just need to make sure this horizontal offset in grid, it's probably going to be 0, 0, but you might want to move it to where is best for you. And also probably increasing the column count, because it'd be much longer. But you could totally do that, which would be really neat. Kind of curious to try it now, but I'm not going to spend $765 on a panel that I have multiple Stream Decks that are more flexible and I can use them with iPads. So, but if you've got that, then that would be great. What else we got? Crackerbox, yes. Replay editor is now supported Surface 2. Yeah, let's have a look at that one. Replay editor. This one, 1 star. Oh, I laugh a little bit because I feel like, I don't know. I don't think I would buy this either. Even though, is it network? No, it's USB. I have the what do you call it, speed editor, and I don't really like it. So I like the wheel, the play button, in and out. Because you can't modify these keys, I think it sort of goes against my ethos of being able to customize things for a workflow. And I was finding when I was using the speed editor that I always ended up kind of having a Stream Deck sitting next to it to do things like, I don't know, pace attributes or something, like little things that I wanted to move faster so that I could stay on the keys rather than having to switch back over to a mouse. So that's where it would have been really useful to have. I mean, maybe Elgato can come out with some sort of panel. I know they've been looking at various different things like, you know, sliders and wheels and stuff like that. So having something with feedback behind it would be much more flexible. But yeah, to me, this is like a whole nother thing that I have to learn specifically how to use, and then maybe it's useful, but it's a very specialized device, and I'd rather have something more global, like a Stream Deck, that I can then use for switching an ATEM or, you know, jumping over to control a PTZ camera or resolve shortcuts or that kind of stuff. So, yeah. All right, I think that's about it. Thanks for the questions. That was really great questions there, and hopefully that sort of related into building out some of these variables that you're going to have in Companion 4.1. Let's wrap up for today, and I will see you towards the end of summer. I'm going to take some time off just to have some time over the summer to enjoy the summer and to recharge, come back fresh. And davidjoshuaford.com is the website that you can go to get the profiles that I have sort of been referring to on here in terms of controlling ATEMs and controlling PTZ cameras. But hopefully on today's show, it gave you an idea of how to create some more advanced functions that can bring sort of multi-layers and multi-steps to the buttons that are on your Stream Deck already. Until then, have a great summer, and I will see you in a month or so. Until then, take care, and see you later. Bye.